Hey everyone, my name is Delane Linkowicz, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm a person living with chronic pain, a sister, daughter, and friend of those living with chronic pain, a PhD student studying chronic pain, and a steering committee member of the Putting the Pieces Together conference. I'm personally coming to you today from Guelph, Ontario, which is located on the unceded, stolen land and traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Ottawandaron, the Haudenosaunee peoples, and the treaty land and territories of the Mississauga of the Credit. I'm really grateful to be joining you today to share knowledge, connect, and learn on these lands. Before we dive into PTPT Day 2, I just have a few housekeeping notes. So this session will be recorded and available on the Pain Canada YouTube channel and website after the conference. For translation and interpretation, look at the bottom of your screen and you will see a button that says CC. You can click this to access translation and closed captions, and then select your desired languages. Simultaneous French audio translation is available, and to access this, please follow the Zoom link posted in the session description. Information about where to seek help in crisis in time if you are in times of need during the conference is available in the exhibit area in Zoom. And this is in the Pain Canada box. You can click on that, and then on the side it says resources for if you're in need of crisis resources. And then you can send questions to speakers through the Q&A function in Zoom. And just a reminder for folks that when you are putting things into the Q&A or the chat, just please be mindful and respectful so that we can ensure that this is a brave and safe space for all. So with that said, I just want to welcome everyone to Day 2 of the 2025 Putting the Pieces Together conference. This is a conference for and by people living with pain. So we'll be communicating through social media platforms using the hashtag PTPT2025. And today we're going to have 3 amazing sessions. I know I'm looking forward to them. I hope you are too. We're starting off with Living with Chronic Pain, a decolonial analysis. Then we're going to move on to Art and Stories, digital storytelling. And then lastly, a session entitled Helping You Help Yourself. So there will be 2 15-minute breaks between the sessions. And just a reminder that this conference has been designed for and by people living with pain. While it's open to everyone, we've really done our best to design it and create a brave and safe space for people who live with pain. And while we hope that there are researchers and clinicians who are here also to learn, please spend your time listening to people who live with pain rather than using these spaces for research or other purposes. I just wanted to take a moment to thank the PTPT steering committee members. It's been such a tremendous joy getting to work with these dedicated people over the last year to put this conference together, and it wouldn't be a success without them. And it also wouldn't be a success without the hundreds of people joining today. So please know that your voice matters, and we really want to hear from you. So please let us know what you think of the sessions by filling out the survey after each session and completing the end of conference surveys. Another thing that I just wanted to note is that I want to thank the conference sponsors. So Pain BC, the Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research, Chronic Pain Network, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, Institute of Musculoskeletal Health and Arthritis, the Partnership for the Engagement of Patients with Pain Research Project, and Health Canada. Another thing I just want to note is that yesterday we had such a fantastic and electric session on pain hacks, and I just wanted to let folks know that we will be putting the information together and it will be posted on Pain Canada's website under resources for people living with pain in about 2 weeks' time. We'll also send it out with the recordings after the conference, so make sure you check that out to look at the amazing kind of life hacks that people with pain put together yesterday. I also just wanted to note that many of our presenters will share stories and perspectives that are shaped by their own individual lived experiences, and the views expressed don't necessarily represent the views of Pain Canada or our sponsors. And so now, with that said, we will start with our very first session, and I'm going to pass it over to Jenny Lorca.
Thank you so much, Delane. Yeah, that session, the chronic pain hacks was fantastic. And so was the caregiver session and the yoga nidra session yesterday with Kendra. Welcome everyone to Living with Chronic Pain, a decolonial analysis with our friends and our guests and my friends, Emerald Asuncion, Vina Mahabir, and Mehmuna Musamita. My name is Jenny Lorca. My pronouns are she, they, and sha, and I am super excited to be the moderator for today's session. Being a steering committee member of this conference gives me that privilege to do so. So I'm going to take up about 5 minutes of your time to introduce myself and the intentions of our time together in this session. I'm a queer, neurodivergent, second-generation disabled Filipinx Gemini who lives with pain and complex chronic disease. And I'm owned by 2 cats. And you may see one of them Zoom bomb me during this session or anytime I'm present in the conference because they just love this place. My family and I are settlers of color and uninvited guests on the traditional unceded and stolen lands of the Coast Salish First Peoples, of whom there are many, on what is known on Turtle Island as the Greater Vancouver Area. I am grateful to the lands and the stewards of the Staulo, the Katzie, the Kwantlen, the Coquitlam, the Semiahmoo, and the Tsawwassen First Nation on the south side of the Staulo River, or otherwise known as the Fraser River, and also to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations in what is known as Vancouver proper, where my family first landed in the 1960s, and where they very quickly learned to assimilate, and where I spent most of my time growing up with English as my only language and feeling really self-conscious about the traditional foods I would bring to school, and straddling 2 worlds where I never felt I belonged to or was enough for. So, what does it mean to decolonize pain? Why do experiences navigating pain diverge so widely among individuals and groups of people? How do systemic factors play into how an individual within a community experiences pain? And how is it that when a community comes together to hold and uplift that individual, everyone is held and uplifted? These are questions we asked ourselves in the co-development of the session. And these are hard questions that we might not be able to answer in this single session, not with the kind of depth that this topic deserves. However, I think that the importance in hard questions also lies in the asking of them. Because at the very least, we hope that this tickles your curiosity and inspires you to learn more, and more importantly, begin to reflect on and engage in dialogue about it. So this is the experiment. How do we embody and demonstrate decoloniality within a relatively colonial structure of a webinar session? One of our intentions in co-developing the session is that it will be less of a panel discussion and more of a mics on dynamic conversation, one where we invite you, our attendees, to participate in, so that we can intentionally and meaningfully weave your stories and experiences, which are important to witness, into this conversation. So it might get a little awkward, right? So you might hear us maybe talking over each other. The invitation is to, as Delane mentioned earlier, to put your comments and questions in the Q&A, which only us on the panel see. So if there is something that you need to have witnessed, but don't feel like sharing it publicly, just state, please do not share, and we will still witness that. One of our intentions, so during the time that we have together, we will ask questions for you to reflect on and share in the Q&A, as I mentioned, if you feel moved to do so. We will try to get to as many of your stories as we can and meet you where you are as the expert in your lived experience and situated experience. That is our hope. And like Therese, Michelle, and Tanis so beautifully expressed in Monday's caregiver session, I too want to offer a gentle content note. These are stories, there are stories and individuals and groups of people living with pain whose situated experience creates heartbreaking outcomes. You yourself may have such stories. So as an attendee, there may be some growth-related discomfort, which we invite you to sit in. However, we never expect you to sit in pain-related discomfort. So consider this your ongoing invitation to extend to yourself the kind of care you would a loved one, which means listen to your body's wisdom. Please attend to your needs as they arise. Shift, move, breathe, hum, look outside, drink water, cry, get up, leave if you need to. All is okay. It's all invited. All the sessions in the conference are recorded, as Delane said, so you can access them when you are ready. Another one of our intentions is transparency, and you've already probably seen me shift, stretch. I will lose my train of thought, I guarantee you. Grunt in excitement, pause to take a breath, cry even. This is me showing up as I am, attempting to let go of this mask of perfectionism and performance and pushing gently but steadily back against what a person in pain should present like, what a person in pain should look like or behave like in public. So today we come together to share our stories and experiences, our grief and our joy, our resources and our resources. Because even though, as I said, we may not have all the answers, we come together, as my former theater instructor, Mark Diamond, used to say, live in the questions. We hope to illustrate that decolonization is not a buzzword, but an intentional practice. Today, we walk in spirit with the stewards of the lands and the waters that we each inhabit, which in turn connect us to our homelands. We believe that this deliberate integration of all of our embodied stories in a system that consistently seeks to divide and conquer our wholeness is where true community care lives. That which liberates one liberates all. Friends, there is so much we can learn from each other. So thank you for listening. And now it is my absolute honor to invite Emerald, Vina, and Memuna to introduce themselves and how they're showing up. How is your heart today, friends?
I think I can't believe I'm already feeling so many like grief. I'm already feeling, I think, profound grief. And I haven't even introduced myself yet to everybody. But I just want to take a second to really thank Jenny for creating this space for us in the PT Steering Committee, because we are not asked to show up today siphoned. We're asked to show up as we are. And for me, that's the biggest gift of all, because when you're constantly told by systems around you that everything about you is wrong, that you're unworthy of relief, that if you don't play certain games within their systems of oppression and power, we have to show up looking and acting different than anybody else in rooms because of the process of racialization, because of the process of white supremacy and colonization. So I'm already starting with a lot of big things, but I think what's most important that you said also is that I stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples like all over Turtle Island. And when I say land back, I really do mean it. And as a settler whose families found safety and refuge on land that has been stewarded to be so resource rich, to be beautiful, to be everything that we can imagine and more, that we are constantly taking, leading to situations like huge situations of environmental racism, such as the hurricane that devastated the Caribbean. And I don't ever want to say devastated when talking about Caribbean people, because we are never devastated. We always are standing up and we are always finding our power in these situations. But it's really important to me today to bring those stories of my ancestors with me today and also remember my stories. And while there is profound joy in having achieved some of their wildest dreams, there's also profound pain.
Thank you, Vina. I'm looking at either of you, Emerald and
Oh,
Mimuna.
Emma.
Um, yeah, I was thinking from the lens of decolonization and what I've learned about how to introduce myself from this lens. I do a lot of work in Filipino spiritual community and decolonizing our spirituality and pre-colonial ways of seeing and knowing. So I don't speak my language very well. I tried to begin learning about 12 years ago. That was probably the beginning of my intentional decolonial journey. So, yeah. Magandang araw. Ako po si Emerald Asuncion, taga saan sa Bacon, Bicol, Ticao, Masbate, at Laoag City, Ilocos Norte, by way of St. John, New Brunswick. That's Micmac and Maliseet territory where I was born. I'm grateful to the prairies that raised me in Treaty 6 territory and all the people of those lands. There's so many to name, and I didn't prepare to say them all, but I'll just say what's up to all my Cree brothers and sisters that spent all that time with me there. Yeah, and I've spent the last 20 years here on unceded Coast Salish territory, mainly in this area, Kamkamale, the sort of downtown east side area of the Maples. Yeah, I'm a diasporic, decolonizing first gen bunso baby of Ida Dichoso Asuncion and Francisco Raborar Asuncion. I'm an artist, an auntie, a sister, friend, community researcher. I love music and textiles and herbal wisdom. Yeah, and yeah, I'm grateful to be here. I can't really articulate as beautifully as Vina did there, but co-sign all of that. So thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so grateful to be here and be witnessed by everyone.
Maraming salamat po, kapatid.
Walang anuman.
Wow, what a wonderful start. Thank you, Jenny, for that really inspiring start to the talk, and to Pain BC for organizing this. We don't take it for granted, based on what Veena, Emerald, and Jenny just shared, that the colonial is the norm. So this is so nice that this is the normative space. Highly unusual for me. My name is Mimuna. And if I want to be really difficult, it's Mimuna Musamita. And no, I don't use a short name.
You difficult me muna.
I'm a Muslim woman who immigrated from Tanzania, which is in East Africa, many years ago, over 50 years ago, and came to live here as an uninvited settler. Lived in Turtle Island, initially in Toronto, but for many years now here on the Saanich territories of the Lekwungen people. And what that did for me was it made me into a person who always lives with being unsettled. As a settler, as a Muslim, as a woman of color. And I think that's really, for a settler, the right place to be. But relatedly, I don't live with chronic pain like some of you do. But what I have learned by being unsettled is how to listen in to stories of people who live with difference. My overriding purpose in my research, because I am an academic at the School of Social Work at UVic, is always to look for what difference does difference make. And to do so, more importantly, in a decolonial way, which is to say, not to treat anyone as an object of study, but rather as people with subject, people with agency, and people with voice. So to know when to shut up and when to listen in and when to witness, but always to be accountable. So thank you, friends. I'm so looking forward to this.
I love that. Sorry, I just wanted to add as well for me, something that I haven't said about me, which is a lot, is I have lived experience with chronic pain, cancer. I just survived stage 3 breast cancer. I'm still doing treatment, and disability. And I identify as a disabled person. And I say that with intention because showing up as a disabled person means showing up in a society not built for you. And it's a political identity because I hope when you look at me, you also understand that I bring that community where it's nothing without us, for us. Disability justice is a reason why we have so much. So I'm really excited to be part of this conversation also because this is a place where we can speak from our bodies, or where many times for us, my body is my classroom, it's my teacher, it's my guide. It's also been one of my biggest challenges at the same time, and it all exists together. Unfortunately, with like the biomedical white supremacist model of healing we have, and I know that's like a lot of jargon, but that's just basically to say that like white people are going to study the way that they want to study. And study us as objects and not people and not as humans. And it's really it really forces us to show up and continue to be advocates and have no choice but to be advocates in the system, where oftentimes we experience immense injustice without ever gaining justice for many folks, including those who have voluntarily, like these conversations are life or death for us because, with medical aid and dying, we've lost members of our community. So, and many of them living with pain. So when we're talking about decolonizing, it's not just kind of buzzwords to us. This is about creating healing and moving through immense grief for our communities.
Emerald, I know that. Thank you for that, Vina. I seldom find myself with words after you speak. It's sort of like you mic drop every time. It's one, thank you for like identifying disabled as the identity, and the space where justice can happen. Yesterday, I'm gonna do a throwback to Alex and Delaine's session on life hacks yesterday. One of the comments that was made in the session where they were trying to brainstorm what is a need that you have, an accessible need that you have that doesn't exist. And one of the comments, who was by a friend of mine, they said that it's not about trying to create accessibility devices. It's about trying to create a world that is accessible to everybody, right? And so and that includes people with pain, that includes mental health, that includes substance use and women's health and trans health and immigrant refugees. That includes everyone. No one should be left behind. And yes, I'm standing a little bit on a soapbox right now, but I think that this, there aren't enough spaces like this. And so I'm grateful that Pain Canada and the Putting the Pieces Together conference gave us this really powerful space in which to stand firmly in in ourselves, right? And that includes every single person in this audience right now, the attendees. You have stories and places from which you can move mountains. And so I saw there was a really gorgeous comment in the Q&A a little while back of like, how can we create more of these spaces? And so hopefully it's not just about us creating this space, it's about everyone creating those little spaces and those little places of discussion and engagement. Emerald, I know you're in lots of spaces that create engagement as well and discussion. Are you, I'm curious what any of this means to you, really. Like we sort of talked about what is decoloniality, and thank you for that, Mihuna. And out of example, we are embodying our intersectionality, like the intersecting identities that um, words. See, I just did it.
I know what you're trying to say, I
Yeah, yeah,
think.
yeah.
It's like a kaleidoscope almost. Sorry, go ahead, Emerald.
So it's like what?
Kaleidoscope, yes.
Oh,
I
kaleidoscope.
Yeah, that's how I almost imagine intersectionality. Like when we were kids and, I was from a family of like low income. So my toys were like paper towel rolls and like toilet paper rolls. So like, making that kaleidoscope and playing with light. But oftentimes I think of intersectionality and like Black feminist thought as like that kaleidoscope and managing to see all the facets of light of somebody. And it's not just light, right? Because dark exists within all of us, and that's healthy. But I just mean in terms of identity, like really reflecting that. But please go ahead, Emerald.
Oh yeah. That's okay. I just created a whole new set of thoughts from listening to that as well. So even what I was gonna say, who knows? Um, but I'm thinking about the lessons that you can learn from a kaleidoscope, from that activity of like the changing, of the constant change, and what you can capture from those moments of extra light or darkness, or where you want to be and where you don't want to be, and what's beautiful to you, and how your relationship to your pain, your relationship to your body is always changing, and how you move with that like you're moving a kaleidoscope, and how you shift your life, and how you interact with your life. Yeah, that's really beautiful metaphor. Yeah, I also forgot to acknowledge that I also am a person who lives with chronic pain, and I only received a diagnosis in the last couple years, and have been living in frustration, confusion, and pain for at least a decade, and so stepping into identities such as acknowledging and affirming, being affirmed in disability, has been really like, it's been shadow work, actually. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of tears. It's been a lot of unlearning, and of like how I see the world, how I see disability, how people interact with others because of their understandings of it, and like the acknowledgement that we are all like colonized minds talking to other colonized minds. And so you have to be really gentle with yourself and others through that. And yeah, I don't think I really acknowledged in me that I was like shifting change until I committed to like decolonial cultural practices as wellness practices. And that looks like I, sorry, I am in a Filipino art collective, and we do a lot of work around mental health, and we host a few healing circles that are intentionally about understanding your experience as a Filipino person living on unceded land, whose identity has been shaped by what our parents were told would be successful, which was assimilation. So just forgetting. So a lot of remembering, which is Jenny's favorite concept we like to talk about, which is sort of a teaching I received from my friend Janelyn Umipig about understanding and witnessing the parts of yourself that aren't serving, aren't necessary, and literally taking that member and remembering it, putting it elsewhere, or replacing it with new ways of being. So that's sort of, we give space for that in these circles. And I feel like I'm going all over the place, but I'm kind of reining it back to your question about how many different decolonial spaces I've been in. But that's the most recent one that I can express at this moment. Yeah.
I I think that yes, and right. I mean, this is not going to be a linear conversation. You know, we can't always lead to the way, right? Like it's because how can we create a like we don't create a tapestry one thread at a time. We create it multiple like in multiple ways. There's Vina, there's somebody in the comments that's loving your metaphor of the kaleidoscope because it is so expressive and light and dark. And like and Emerald, with respect to talking about shadows and remembering, like putting yourself back together or choosing which parts to let go. Um, there was a really great comment in the Q&A that I hope that we can speak to about white supremacy. There was a reaction to, so um,
I don't mind addressing because I
sure,
said I don't mind it.
yeah,
Like this is important and part of the conversation.
yeah,
And as Emerald mentioned, we're all coming at it from, like different perspectives, different phases, and different lived and situated experience. For me, especially now, where we're living in a time of alt-right politics, anti-Blackness, anti-Indigenous violence, fear of migrants, disabled people in the US, the SNAP benefits are about to be gone. Um, people are being taken off the streets. I can keep going on about what is happening. And it's sad because even here, right at home in Canada, it's happening. And or this so-called land Canada. But really recognizing the fact that at this time, we've heard a lot about diversity, inclusion, equity work. But when I talk about this, I want to name the systems that cause the violence, that cause the harm. And I want to validate that it exists. It's not imagined, it's not perceived. This exists. And healing, it's important to name white supremacy, capitalism, colonialism directly because they are harming folks. I went through the healthcare system, and I'm sure many folks in the Toronto area in the healthcare system probably see themselves as doing the work, right? Where oftentimes, you're told, they do a webinar or something like that, and a lot of folks are really trying their best. Um, I'm not explicitly speaking about that, but a lot of it is unintentional. It's in the way the structures were built to purposefully exclude people. Police were at first created to essentially hunt for indigenous peoples all over Turtle Island. The transatlantic slave trade and the Middle Passage happened. My family was on those same waters that connect us to where we are today. So deep colonizing pain and these systems, they shape who's allowed to heal, who's allowed to say they're in pain, what pain looks like, what treatments are available to us. I've been I've had surgical procedures done on me without anesthetic because you're so stoic, Vina. You're strong. And that's the reality of our experience as a teenager going through the healthcare system, being told, oh, you know what? Like your prayers are a bit weird, And because my family heard from our priest that if we buy a cow, that should help with my good karma. I mean, there's a whole casteism and all that to talk about over there. But just in terms of my journey as this displaced kid with unsure about their culture, who they are, you're often told your family structure is enmeshment and pathological. And those words are used as weapons on purpose. And I refuse to shadow and not say that. Earlier this year, I gave a talk at a meeting, and essentially the comments were I'm using sensationalist language by saying things like white supremacy. But in a system where you're told that if you're not healing this way, you're not following or adhering to a certain management style of pain, that it's wrong that your family thinks Tiger Balm heals everything. But those are my family's lived experiences. That's their lived knowledge. So I refuse, decolonizing pain means refusing to make healing apolitical. Nothing is apolitical. And if you have the luxury to believe that, I really hope you sit with this. It means creating care that values people over productivity and relationships over research output. It means remembering that knowledge doesn't only live in these white ivory towers, right? It lives in our bodies, in our communities, in our lolas, in our nannies, in our nanas, in our muskies, in our families, in our, in our aunties, and like that is who it is. And healing in decolonizing healing is not about returning to normal. Because normal is the default is you are a white, able-bodied person walking through society. And I say that I'm walking on purpose because let's talk about accessibility if you're trying to use a cane or navigate the world. But anyways, so yeah, like for me, that instinct of like, I feel uncomfortable here. I'm listening to it because my body has always been my first teacher. It's got me here. And that's my, as Mamuna always says, that's my embodied wisdom. So I really hope that that person I completely understand and I hear that this is really hard to hear. That these experiences did happen. That as a kid, I've seen youth with sickle cell, the same pain flares happen, they die because of anti-Blackness. So it's not, it's about building conditions where we can be liberated together. Sorry, I hope that was
Do not apologize for that, Vina.
That was beautiful, Vina. That was very inspiring, very beautiful. I'm just going to follow with a I
yes.
cannot follow your footsteps. Your
No, 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 no. It's
embodied
we're all here together.
experience speaks so wisely. But I did want to say a few things. So we say white supremacist because we are talking about, as Vina said, we're talking about systems. And one of the major systems that operates for people who face embodied pain is the medical system. And we start with knowledge. Like when we're doing decolonial work, we start with unlearning. And the first piece in pain is how do we understand pain? And the biomedical model is a white supremacist model. We have to call it that. It's not individuals we are naming and labeling, it's the whole system. It's the language of thinking. And there can be brown people working within that system, believing in that. And so, how it's understood within a biomedical lens, which is the normative mainstream lens, as Veena and Emerald have so beautifully explained, that it's all about the authority on who knows pain lies in the practitioner, the health practitioner, as though the health practitioner is somehow neutral and knows the truth. And the most important thing is that the very multi-complex experience of pain, from what people like you have taught me, as well as people I have talked with, worked alongside other people living in pain, is that it's a far more complex issue, pain, than just what is happening to your brain or your body, or as understood in the medical system. And Veena, you really hit it on the nail, because a decolonial way of knowing pain is to understand pain as political. And how is it political? Through colonization. The context in which we experience pain, and even where, as you so movingly explained, Veena, where our pain gets exacerbated is through the colonial context. It's through practices of coloniality. And that's what makes it decolonial. And so it's really important that we first begin by, as you say, naming and labeling white supremacist ways of knowing, and then move to unlearning those, and then look at where coloniality plays a role in our experiences of pain. And you've given some really moving examples in your own life, and there are so many more. And essentially, the colonial practices dehumanizes, it considers the patients as somehow dispensable because it disbelieves their embodied wisdom, which is such a site of knowledge for decolonial ways of thinking and being. And it just simply reduces people to a singular, unintersectional lens. And so it has to be named as such. Yeah, I'm going to shut up.
Friends. Okay. Um, I'd like to I'd like to go back a little bit to something that Emerald had mentioned about practices, traditional, and I think Vina, you too, right? Traditional practices, whether it's prayer or I think Emerald, you may have mentioned movement or something. And also that sense of like, how do I know how that sense of knowingness, right? I know that all of us, not just on this conversation, but all of us in who are watching now and future have this sense of like a yes or a no. Have had a sense of like, I don't think that, that doesn't sit well with me, or had a sense of absolute yes. So, and that also speaks to something that Vina, you said about like siphoning, subsuming, pushing down any of those responses that come naturally to us as embodied people, because we are often dismembered in the medical system. So I know this is a really long and complicated question. What are the practices that each of you, and I'm also inviting this in the audience, what are the practices that each of you do to remember, to use Emerald's favorite phrase, yourself? How do you know? What is your sense of knowing? How can you continue to build that?
Emerald, do you want to go first?
Sure.
You don't have to. That didn't sound like a happy share.
No. I'm just trying to like gather some
Yeah.
thoughts together here. Um, I'm thinking about how easily isolating it can be when you're in these places of not feeling 100%, and you kind of tell yourself, I don't need to be around other people because I'm going to be a bummer. And that just perpetuates it. When we know, or maybe not everyone knows, but I'm going to tell you now, whether you like it or not, healing happens in community. So having a developed network of people who have the skills, who can take care of each other, and when we don't have that, we have resources that are there to hold us as well. Um, and in that, the I'm trying to figure out how I got here, because this is all within like my cultural community mainly, and that's because I grew up, as I said, in the prairies in the 90s. It was very not melanated. And yeah, and I just spent my entire life thinking like, okay, if I do everything that these white kids do, I will receive the same opportunities. I will get the same things. And I will be a Canadian, And I didn't realize until I actually committed to getting to know people in my community, and people who look like me, and just all of a sudden being in a room eating Filipino food, looking at everyone's bodies and being like, "Oh, we all have the same calves." There's something so like transformative about that. And so it's like feeling into those transformative moments, those like joyful moments, the whatever feels attractive to you, and keeping going with that. Because yeah, like having no relationship to your blood family, let alone your ancestors, you have to find what intuitively feels good to you, what inside of you is like calling, or why are you attracted to that thing in the outside world? Something something inside of you is saying like, oh yeah, no, we know that. Bring that over here. Whether it be these embodied practices that I sort of quickly mentioned there, but like from my art collective, I was able to connect with textiles and drumming and dance and martial arts, language, again, food, herbal wisdom, and history. People have books. People have stories.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I feel like the pain that, pain is a journey. It's not, there's no end point. So it's part of the management. Being in cultural community, like it might still be like anguishing. Many things might feel anguishing, but you have these other parts that help you feel more whole. So I guess that's I forgot the original question, but that's the end
Okay.
of my answer.
I think, ah, world, pain is a journey. I think this goes back to a previous conversation that we had where you had mentioned, where you described in gesture what your pain journey looks like, because pain is not, our experience of pain is not linear. It is a dance. It is a spiral. For me, it's the hokey pokey, right? It's sort
Right.
of, um, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing the places where you find yourself.
Mhm.
Um, there's a really great question in the audience. Oh, and it's almost time for questions too. Um, there's some really great questions in here that I do want us to have time to get to. Um, and I hope that we can continue to integrate us into answering the questions. So one of the earlier questions, and this actually leads into what one of the themes we had, which was how do we integrate? How do we integrate? How do we see colonial practices in motion, right?
Yeah.
So, where are you here? Pardon.
The questions are so good. I was
They are
just,
so good.
it's
Yes,
so
Yeah,
hard.
I lovely.
yes. And thank you for the almost swears too. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
How can we decolonize the communication of pain when in direct interaction one senses how subtly the other person avoids acknowledging or responding to one's expression of suffering?
Mm.
Ooh, that's a really
Mm,
good one.
Mm.
You know, we've talked a lot about like the positive sides of community, and
Mhm.
Guyanese people have like this thing where it's like if you're going to talk about our community, you talk about it like inside the house, like you don't talk about it outside the house with strangers. Again,
Mm.
like another symptom of like colonialism there. Um, but like I personally found that it's been really difficult because we've like lost our language, we've lost a lot of our cultural practices, we've gained a lot, especially given the connection between the African and Chinese like laborers as well. but
Mm.
um I think like it's really difficult to even know at first like what a decolonized space feels like, even in our own communities, just because oftentimes folks, again, like as Maimuna said so well, there can be brown folks that continue to perpetuate systems of oppression and power, and we see that, right? Like we constantly see that. Like
Mm.
I don't want to get too, I mean, this is all political. I'm very political, but there are lots of we can see that, just looking at like leadership, right? In the world, and versus like community-led resistance and movements, like the diversity is so different there. But I think for me, it's realizing that like these systems are also within our houses.
Mm.
And it's really important that like, when my aunties say to me, like, why are you talking about this? People are going to look at you and give you like bad eye. I don't know if y'all have something, or like nazar is like the actual
Mhm.
like Hindi word for it, but it's like it's a very serious thing. It's like it's almost like if your elders think that like that is going on with you, it's very serious. You're pulled out of community. You're like there are special things that you have to do before you re-enter community. And going through all that was incredibly painful for me because I was like, I felt like I was the only kid who had chronic pain that I knew. I felt alone in my community because of the perpetuations of their trauma and grief that haven't been fully healed yet. And it's really difficult because it's like it's what I find in decolonized spaces is the sense of calm, the sense of wholeness. And I know it's really hard that like what I'm saying is essentially my gut feelings and like what makes something feel decolonized to me. But it really does come down to like safety, right? Like we have the there's a whole backstory to it, but like there's the Maslow hierarchy of needs, which was stolen from Indigenous peoples, right? I can talk about that, but we're running low on time. But that the reality is that is Indigenous wisdom, right? That a researcher went into a community and took credit for, right? But I still liked the principles are still there, those core tenets of like we have to be able to feel safe in these spaces. So a lot of times for me, it's like, do I feel safe enough to say that I'm in pain, to not mask my pain, to not mask myself? Do I feel safe enough to brave enough to confront these systems and in these rooms? Do I have enough support? Because if oftentimes like in this room with the four of you, right, the four of us, I feel strong, I feel supported, I feel confident to share these experiences. But in other spaces, I find myself being quiet and off very purposefully excluding myself from those spaces because of how unsafe they feel. So I think something that might help everybody is if you talk to the people in the room from these different backgrounds, from these different experiences, and learn for us what a liberated or brave spaces or safe spaces, whatever, that is to you, how we can make those spaces. And I often say like these things, like as Emerald said, like she just went out and started having conversations. And that's how I found the pain community. I was like, at the time before, like it was X, we had Twitter, we had disability Twitter. And I actually met so many people like who I see are here in this conference. Like that's where we met in that community. And it's been a real grief that like it's not there, but online communities are definitely just as vital, especially for folks who where society is not made for us. So don't be afraid. Like your online community is real. Your online friends are your real friends. Like I know oftentimes there is like that notion that it's not real, but the connection is real. And we're decolonizing these digital spaces just like we're doing today. So I think that's also very important.
I'm just gonna affirm that one quickly because I'm in like 3 different decolonial discords, and they're like the most supportive spaces. I'm not in there a lot, but I love reading through what people are are going through and how they're supporting each other. It really is like it's inspiring. It made me want to make a space for that too, but I that's just another project. But
More labor, great.
yeah.
But I also think like the questioner is asking, what if you feel like they don't care about your suffering? And I think that all of us in different ways, I may not live with chronic pain, but I do live with the pain of colonization through my ancestors to today. And I think that I don't know that I always want to educate people.
Yeah.
Like if you don't care
Great.
for my suffering, it's a non-starter. Um, with health practitioners, I would absolutely insist on my embodied knowledge to be taken into consideration. And I would actually point out why. I would say that this is a Cartesian kind of bias that the medical system have, which is that body and mind are separate. But we in our traditional teachings know it to be the body-mind. We don't actually separate it. The body makes sense of the world. It's an intellectual as well as an embodied activity. And the body is the target of colonization, always has been. So it contains knowledge. And I would insist on that. Like that would be my way of making people listen is to change the code of engagement. instead of giving others the power to tell you how to have that conversation, I would have a different conversation. I would actually ask, what about unconscious biases? Where do you think they exist in your encounter with me? Where are they? And because no one accepts that they have conscious biases, so then let's go with the unconscious. That is really a source of colonization, right? And I also think that a big barrier to having an equal conversation is we are treated as passive, either because we are seen as patients, disabled, diseased, but we're survivors and quite complex in our methods of surviving. And you both, and all three of you, actually, Jenny, you've been kind enough to give us space, but know about the hundreds and millions in diverse ways by which we have survived and we have lived. And now we are actually resurging under extremely high odds that we would actually get squashed in the way that you talk about, Vina. So
Yeah.
I think a reminder of who we are is good.
Yeah, and I would just say like you're in community with us, like you're here today, and like we don't take that lightly, like what that means to all of us and like holding that space.
Mm.
And I just want to I feel like I answered and I didn't really say like the pain that happens when the folks in power don't believe your pain. It's real. Like it's real. And oftentimes as folks with like limited energy, brain fog, doing so many different things, right? Like not just our medical conditions,
Yeah.
it feels like that physician or that healthcare professional is that like the be all end all and there's no other options. But I often say in these cases, don't be afraid to go to if your hospital or institution has a patient relations. Like this is that in within these systems of oppression, there's unfortunately a limited amount that we can do because we need to interact with them, right? Like it's painful I hate that I need to go to the hospital. Like and as a researcher who works at a hospital, like I don't know how I ended up there, but like it's painful like every day when you walk into these places for us and oftentimes realizing how the system wants us to feel incredibly powerless and
Mm.
like there's nothing else there. But um, you come from people who have resisted, as Maimuna said,
Mhm.
and remembering that is in you, that lies deep inside you. That seed is still there. And at decolonizing is cleaning out all those weeds and starting to grow that new perspective and view of the world. Or at least that's how I saw my process. I really thought while I was decolonizing, it's very difficult. You kind of feel like um, there's nothing like it. Like you kind of are like, I don't know if people have seen that meme of like all the math all around you, but like that's what it feels like when you start noticing how society and how these systems work. So yeah, just want to hold space for that painful experience because it does exist. And I wish we could change it and we're working on it. Like I promise you, we are, but you also aren't alone in this. Like we are all here to support that journey and your community is here.
Mm.
I just want to add to that because I'm just thinking about the blossoming and growth that you and just the metaphors we keep talking in and how this space and creating more spaces like that is the container that is like creating the nourishment because it's the fertile ground, it's the soil where all of this begins. So we need to just keep having these conversations and then connecting in that darkness, in that dark, hard stuff, these hard conversations, saying these words that make you feel uncomfortable, that have been uncomfortable experiences. Like you can hear a word and be like, "Whoa, the idea of that sound feels horrible." And it's like, guess what? People live that.
Yeah.
And so with that knowledge, that's the nutrients, that's the soil that we're all like cultivating from, and we're decomposing what's not working. We're planting seeds, they're gonna blossom, and we are growing our understandings. Boom. Like,
Yeah.
All right.
So, period.
We have 1 minute. What I'm going to say is to everyone who is attending or watching, thank you for your comments and your questions. That provided a lot of the fertilizer for this conversation too. It wasn't just generated from us. We are saving the Q&A so that we can continue to reflect and review post this event. So thank you. Oh gosh. I'm going to give us 10 seconds to say 2 words on how we feel having emerged, ask how the 4 of us feel having emerged from this conversation. 2 words, or 1, or something.
Energized.
Go rest.
Go rest.
So
Yes.
everyone here, go rest. That is also a function of capitalism and white supremacy. So, like, take back your breaks, take back that, like, go rest. Like, that's what I have to say. If this is on YouTube, this is one of the most accessible conferences here. This work is hard. Drink some water, nourish, because it's not easy talking about any of this and like pulling those experiences out for all of us, including everyone sitting here. But go rest. That's my 2 words.
I was the opposite, I was like energetic. I shouldn't rest.
It's okay. You're the able-bodied researcher. You
That's
go.
right.
You go.
I
You
can
go.
keep working.
Okay, Emerald.
yeah, go rest, energize, liberate. Let's go.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
We got work to do.
Yeah. I'm feeling integrated.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, passing it off to Delane.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm grateful we have a break next. In the words of Vina, we're going to take a 15-minute break just to go rest, continue reflecting. I know I'm going to continue reflecting, and also just a reminder that all of these conversations that we're having this week, and especially this one for me, I'm going to go and like rewatch that, right? Because there's so much wisdom that was just shared, and I'm really grateful to be listening and learning from all of you. And that includes the folks in the comments as well. I really appreciate how engaged and thoughtful everyone's being. So thank you for that. We're going to return in 15 minutes for our next session on digital storytelling. Thanks, everyone.
Nice to see you all. Take care.